What I'm trying to say is that Star Wars projects shouldn't be afraid to take on different tones. There is more than enough room for Andor, where it's more serious and gritty, and those that are more akin to the sillier moments of The Phantom Menace, maybe Skeleton Crew, Ewoks. Star Wars is strengthened by its diversity of genre, and that's why I'm not counting on The Mandalorian and Grogu being the most serious of the New Republic projects. If it's dealing with the theme of family, found family between Din and Grogu, if you think about it, that is the essential George Lucas ingredient that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni should adopt. Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars video. Hope you're all having an amazing day. Just a bit of housekeeping before we dive into this one. We are nearing 140,000 subscribers. That is insane. Thank you all so much for your amazing support. When we reach that milestone, it is time for another Star Wars Meg Q&A. A really huge community event, so if you've not done so, please be sure to hit the big subscribe button down below, hit the bell for notifications, and why not check out our Patreon, the link is down below. But no more jibber jabber, let's dive into it. So in today's video, I want to address what is in my opinion one of the most pressing questions about modern day Star Wars. It's really easy for fans to say, all we want is well-written content. That's all well and good, but when you really get down to it, when you get right down to it, you realize there is way more nuance than what you think that entails. As Star Wars fans with a huge range of interest in this amazing galaxy, we're all going to have fundamentally different opinions on what Star Wars is and what we think it ought to be. So I came across a post that puts forward a really poignant opinion. People want Star Wars to be gritty and serious, when goofy cartoonishness is in its DNA, and George Lucas would definitely agree with that. And then they provide an example from Return of the Jedi. The heroes get literally caught in a Looney Tunes trap. The scene where Han accuses Chewie on Andor of always being driven by his belly, Han reaching for Luke's lightsaber, and R2-D2 cutting them out with that little device. It was silly, it was goofy, and George Lucas loves that. When he was in charge, he always said, Star Wars is primarily made for kids. I personally think it's for everyone, but various shows and various projects, as Star Wars has diversified under Disney, with a range of shows and movies, I think audiences will be drawn to different things. And this is where the debate starts. What should Star Wars be? Should it be as serious as Tony Gilroy's Andor? There's room in this galaxy for different sorts of projects, with different genres. But when Star Wars puts the emphasis on wars, galactic conflicts, oppression, under the Imperial regime, grittiness suits it best. And we've had certain projects that incorporate a number of different facets on the seriousness spectrum. And as we approach Skeleton Crew, which has a serious plot, but is definitely a more kid-friendly show, we need to remember the goofy moments in Star Wars serve as a reminder that the franchise never took itself too seriously, especially George Lucas himself. It was an adventurous space opera that focused on family. In his own words, it was all about fathers and sons. Family drama set in space. The message of hope, giving kids the hero's journey, inspired by a range of cultural, anthropological and historical storytelling. And while of course there is a key political warning and message about how democracies can turn into dictatorships, his message still came across in spite of the absurdity of some moments. Humor, goofiness, those things added a sense of levity to the more serious and heavier themes of good versus evil, destiny and heroism. The mix of epic and goofy moments helped to distinguish Star Wars as having its own unique identity. And if for no other reason, Skeleton Crew, despite it not being too overly hyped at this point, might be one of the most Star Wars-y things we've gotten in a very long time. The two things can coexist, where serious and grievous stakes are contrasted by lightheartedness. I will admit, sometimes the maker himself, George Lucas, took things too far. If you look at the deleted scenes of Revenge of the Sith, Anakin was going to make a joke to Obi-Wan by talking in droid.
Oh, yes, you're right. Beep is up.
What I love about the goofiness is it makes the franchise accessible and enjoyable for fans of all ages. Because remember guys, once upon a time, we were kids who became Star Wars fans. As adults, it's so easy to criticize some of those moments and say this is too silly for me and my age demographic. But remember this, as kids watching Star Wars for the first time, those moments hit us very differently. I remember being a kid who loved Jar Jar Binks. I thought his goofiness was hilarious. He was one of my favourite characters. As an adult, my perspective on Jar Jar Binks is of course going to be different. But we have to remember some of the genius of George Lucas's story was giving us a narrative that spoke to everyone, across age groups, across cultures, across languages. Star Wars is so popular across the world. And in meeting Star Wars fans myself, you realise how many people just love the world Star Wars gives us. The silly aliens, even the special editions, Cy Snootle's big lips coming up to the screen when she's singing, Jabba the Hutt's exaggerated grossness, those are part of the fundamental identity Star Wars possesses. I wouldn't want Star Wars without it, but as I said, there's a place for the more serious stuff. And are we forgetting, even in projects like Andor, there were some very silly moments. Maybe not as overt as projects like Book of Boba Fett, but I think the balance in Andor is perfect. My goodness, I can't wait for season 2. In my estimation, it is a key ingredient, and part of the reason I'm really excited for Skeleton Crew. I could be wrong about this, but with less than 2 months to go, and with just the one trailer out at the time of making this video, it seems like the creature design and the silliness that will follow with it might be one of the most enjoyable things about the show. Jude Law said so himself. He said one of the most fun things about filming it was seeing all the familiar characters, the Jawas, the Shistavanan, other species in the underworld. It sounds like it could be a lot of fun. But don't get me wrong, under Disney there have definitely been some mishaps with the silliness. There are hilarious times, like when Boba Fett was chasing that droid in Jabba's palace, but there were moments like Luke in The Last Jedi that just seemed a bit too eccentric, off-putting, bizarre, and out of character. The green milk moment. And there have been defenders of this scene, insisting Luke was just regressing in his moment of need to being a farm boy. But I don't think that rung true throughout the fandom. I think we just saw it as a really disappointing creative choice after years of waiting for Luke's return, after the cliffhanger in The Force Awakens. Of course there are times the silliness is cringe, but believe it or not, as annoying as Basil was in The Acolyte, and as much as I don't like that show, at least that little beaver sniffer distracted us from some of the more awful moments. But when you're talking about moments like the moment in Return of the Jedi, the Cantina Band in A New Hope, Yoda's quirky behaviour in The Empire Strikes Back when pretending to be crazy before revealing himself as a Jedi, Wicket's encounter with Leia, these are moments that make Star Wars so fun. But at times when Star Wars blends these two things well, you get some of the most enjoyable content. I understand that Attack of the Clones, for example, isn't everyone's cup of tea. It's one of my favourite movies, because it balances the serious with the goofy. For instance, the film noir genre of Obi-Wan's Mystery of the Poisoned Dart, and Dex's Diner. The story advances, nothing is taken away from the severity and the urgency of the Camino subplot, but you also get a look at Coco Town, a 50s-inspired Star Wars diner, a funny waitress droid, and some really awesome character designs. And someone who actually responded to my comments about this is one of my favourite expanded universe writers, Michael A. Stackpole, one of the absolute legends of, well, Star Wars legends. I have the privilege that we follow each other on X, and he said this: when writing the novels, we all knew you needed action, suspense, some horror, humour, and romance. If you couldn't deliver all 5, the work would fall short in the eyes of fans. The balance of the different ingredients that make Star Wars what it is. Humour and romance being a bigger one for George Lucas in the prequel days, but whether it's a Star Wars movie, a Star Wars show now under Disney, or the novels, you need all of those elements. A great point. But what do you guys think? Do you think Star Wars needs more goofiness? Has Disney done it justice? Or should it always be serious? I want to know your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, my dear friends, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and may the Force be with you, always.